Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty provocative claim that the money system you and I use every single day isn't just a little flawed, it's a full-on scam. And the whole argument kicks off with a mystery that starts in one very specific year. To get what's going on, you have to look at the year 1971. There's a whole website dedicated to this one question, and it's just filled with charts all showing the same thing. Right around that time, something broke. Income inequality, debt, inflation, you name it, it takes a sharp, and I mean sharp, turn. So what on earth happened in 1971 that could knock the entire global economy so completely off its rails? Okay, look at this chart. This shows income inequality in the US. For decades, things were pretty stable, right? But then, bam, look at that steep climb that kicks off in the early 70s. And this isn't just some weird one-off chart. You see the same pattern everywhere. In wages, in debt, in wealth. It's like someone literally flipped a switch on the economy. To understand that switch, we first have to ask, what even is money?
So, what is money really? Really, I mean, at its core. For almost all of human history, it wasn't just some piece of paper. It had to be something real, something that actually held its value.
Well, the term for that is sound money. Think of things like shells used by our ancestors, or of course gold. As analysts like Nick Szabo point out, these things worked as money for a reason. They had real qualities. They were hard to find, they lasted a long time, and you couldn't just whip up a fake batch. The key thing was, their supply couldn't be messed with by some king or government who just felt like printing more. It was a reliable way to store your wealth. And for a long time, that core idea led us to the gold standard. As you can see on this timeline, your dollar bill was basically just a receipt. It was a claim check for a real physical amount of gold sitting in a vault. But that all-important link, it got completely severed in 1971, when the U.S. made what they called a temporary decision, a decision that has defined our entire economic world for the last 50 years. Temporarily suspending. You gotta love that. According to economist Richard Werner, this happened because countries like France were getting nervous and were literally sending warships to New York Harbor to cash in their dollars for actual gold bars. The U.S. was bleeding gold and had to stop it. So that temporary little suspension from 1971, yeah, it's still in effect today. And just like that, money was no longer tied to anything real. Its value came from one thing and one thing only: government decree, or Fiat. Okay, so if money isn't backed by gold anymore, where does it come from? Does the government just hit print on a giant machine? Well, the sources we dug into argue that the truth is way, way stranger than that. And it's right at the heart of this whole fiat money scam argument. And this is where it gets really wild. That picture we all have in our heads of governments printing stacks of cash, it's mostly a myth. Economist Richard Werner actually went out and proved, empirically, that the vast majority of money isn't printed at all. It's created, poof, into existence by commercial banks every single time they make a loan. When you go get a mortgage, the bank doesn't take someone else's savings and give it to you. It just types new numbers into your account. Brand new money created out of thin air. Now, the old textbook explanation for this is a thing called fractional reserve banking, which you can see here. The idea that a deposit gets lent out over and over again. But as we just learned from Werner's work, the reality today is even more direct. The loan creates the deposit, not the other way around. But you know what? In the end, the result is the same. The entire system is built on one thing: creating new money as new debt. But here is the absolute kicker. This new money doesn't just spread out evenly through the economy. Nope. This is called the Cantillon effect. The people who get their hands on the new money first, we're talking governments, big banks, giant corporations, they get to spend it while prices are still low. But by the time that money trickles all the way down to you, to the average person, prices for everything have already started to go up. Your purchasing power has been silently drained away. And what you end up with is a system that by its very design creates clear winners and clear losers. It's not a bug in the system. The sources argue it's the entire point. It's a feature. This chart, which is based on work by economists Stopke and Schneider, spells it out. Inflation is just a massive hidden transfer of wealth. Who wins? Debtors. The government, with its trillions in debt, wins. People with fixed-rate mortgages win. They get to pay back their old loans with new, cheaper money. And who loses? Savers. Anyone who did the responsible thing and saved cash finds that their hard-earned money is worth less and less every year.
And the long-term results? They're just staggering. This data from economist Guido Holzman shows the difference between the mean or average net worth and the median or typical household's net worth. Just look at that ratio on the right. It climbs, and then after the 2008 financial crisis, when money creation went into overdrive, it just explodes. The gap between the truly wealthy and the typical person just blew wide open. The argument here is that fiat money takes small differences in income and turns them into gigantic differences in wealth.
For the average person just trying to put some money aside for the future, the end result is just a slow, grinding destruction of their savings. Take the British pound. Since 1971, it's lost something like 90% of its purchasing power. Think about that. This isn't just the market going up and down. Critics call it what it is, a hidden tax that bleeds the value from your work and your savings year after year.
So what's the endgame of all this? Well, as author David Corton describes it, you get something that looks a lot like systemic debt slavery. A system that pushes and demands more and more debt locks people into a cycle they can never climb out of. It creates a kind of modern-day indentured servitude, where more and more of your life's work just goes to paying off the interest on debt.
So, wow. If the game is rigged like these sources claim it is, what's the move? Is there a way out? How do you actually escape this fiat money trap? While the folks who advocate for sound money, drawing on the ideas of economists like F.A. Hayek, have a pretty radical solution: complete monetary freedom. Basically, end the government's monopoly on what we can use as money. Let the market decide. Let private currencies compete with government money, and let people freely choose whichever one they actually trust to hold its value. So on a personal level, this leaves you with two totally opposite strategies. The first is to play the fiat game to win. As Saifedean Alos argues, you have to bet against the currency. That means taking on as much smart, fixed-rate debt as you can. Or there's path number two. You opt out. You get out of the currency. You protect your wealth by trading your constantly devaluing dollars for real assets, things that can't just be created out of thin air, like property, gold, or other hard assets like Bitcoin.
And that brings us to one last fascinating thought from the economist F.A. Hayek, who was thinking about this problem way back in 1984. He said that maybe the real solution isn't to try and fight the system head-on. Maybe the answer is to, in his words, by some sly roundabout way, introduce something that they can't stop. What that something might be, and whether it could actually be a path to freedom, well, that might be one of the most important questions of our lifetime.